Another story that I don't think got enough air time yesterday or attention concerns Bank of America Corporation. Well, they were found liable. Yes, Bank of America was found liable for fraud yesterday over defective mortgages sold by its countrywide unit. A major win for the U.S. government in one of the few trials stemming from the financial crisis. Well, after a 4-week trial, a federal jury in New York found the bank liable on one civil fraud charge. Countrywide originated shoddy home loans in a process called Hustle and sold them to government mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government said. Now, the 4 men and 6 women on the jury also found former Countrywide executive Rebecca Marion liable for one fraud charge she faced. The U.S. Justice Department has said it would seek up to nearly $850 million, the gross loss. It said that Fred and Fannie, or rather that Fannie and Freddie, suffered on the loans, but it will be up to the U.S. District Judge Jed Rakoff to decide on the penalty. Arguments on how the judge will assess penalties are set for December 5th of this year. Any penalty would add to the more than $40 billion Bank of America has spent on disputes stemming from the 2008 financial crisis. The jury's decision concerned a single countrywide program that lasted several months and ended before Bank of America's acquisition of the company. Bank of America spokesman Lawrence Grayson said, "We will evaluate our options for appeal." Meanwhile, Mark Mukasey, a lawyer for Marion, called his client a woman of integrity, ethics, and honesty, adding that they would fight on. She never engaged in fraud because there was no fraud. Well, yesterday's verdict was a major victory for the Justice Department, which has been criticized for failing to hold banks and executives accountable for their roles in the events leading up to the financial crisis. The government continues to investigate banks for conduct related to the financial crisis. The verdict comes as the government is negotiating a $13 billion settlement with J.P. Morgan Chase & Company to resolve a number of probes and claims arising from its mortgage business, including the sale of mortgage bonds. The lawsuit stemmed from a whistleblower case originally brought forward by Edward O'Donnell, a former Countrywide executive who stands to earn up to $1.6 million for his role. The case centered on a program called the High-Speed Swim Lane, also called HSSL or Hustle, that government lawyers said Countrywide began in 2007. The Justice Department contended that fraud and other defects were rampant in Hustle loans because Countrywide estimated loan quality checkpoints and paid employees based on loan volume and speed. The Justice Department said the process was overseen by Marion, a former chief operating officer of Countrywide's Full Spectrum Lending Division. Marion is now a managing director at J.P. Morgan. About 43% of the loans sold to the mortgage giants were materially defective, the government said. Bank of America bought Countrywide in July of 2008. 2 months later, the government took over Fannie and Freddie. Bank of America and Marion denied any wrongdoing. Lawyers for the bank sought to show the jury that Countrywide had tried to ensure it was issuing quality loans and that no fraud occurred. Well, the lawsuit was the first financial crisis-related case against the bank by the Justice Department to go to trial under the under the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act. The law, passed in the wake of the 1980s savings and loan scandals, covers fraud affecting federally insured financial institutions. The Justice Department, and particularly lawyers in the office of U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara in the Southern District of New York, have sought to dust off the rarely used law and bring cases against banks accused of fraud. Among its attractions, FIREA provides a statute of limitations of 10 years, allows the government to bring civil cases for alleged criminal wrongdoing. Virginia Gibson, a lawyer at the law firm Hogan Lovells, said the Bank of America verdict was a big deal because it shows the scope of a tool the government has not used frequently since its inception. Gibson and other lawyers said any appeal by Bank of America would likely focus on a ruling made by the judge before the trial that endorsed a government position that it could bring a case against the bank when the bank itself was the financial institution affected by the fraud. Now, the case was one of 3 lawsuits in New York where judges had endorsed that interpretation. Banks have generally argued that the interpretation is contrary to the intent of Congress, which they said is more focused on others committing fraud on banks. Bank of America's case was the first to go to trial, a rarity given that banks more typically choose to settle government claims instead of face a jury. But Bank of America has said that it can't be expected to compensate every entity that claims losses that were actually caused by the economic shutdown, or downturn rather. In a statement, Bahara said the Bank of America chose to defend Countrywide's conduct with all its might and money, claiming there was no case there. Well, the office will never hesitate to go to trial because to expose fraudulent corporate conduct and hold companies accountable, particularly when it's caused such harm to the public. Now, in the wake of this, in the late afternoon trading, Bank of America shares went down 27 cents at $14.25 on the New York Stock Exchange. The case will continue to follow that and hopefully have more information on December 5th. Okay, let's see. 2 more things I want to bring up, and then I'll get into the rest of the heart of the program for today. More tragic news regarding more school-place violence. Yesterday, a young woman was found dead. The second American teacher alleged to have been murdered by a young student in less than 48 hours in the United States. Not a statistic to be proud of, to say the least. Colleen Ritzer, just 24 years old. Can you imagine being 24 years old again if you've passed that age like I have long since ago? 24 years old, and her life stuffed out, and she sounded like a very promising teacher. Well, she was a math teacher at Danvers High School in Massachusetts, was reported missing Tuesday after failing to return home or answer her cell phone. Well, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm appeared in court yesterday charged with assaulting, beating, and murdering her. He was ordered held without bail and would be tried as an adult, said a spokeswoman for the district attorney's office. Now, police discovered blood in the second floor bathroom of the Danvers High School and found her body in nearby woods. That's according to Essex District Attorney Jonathan Blodgett. It was apparent that she is a homicide victim. She was a teacher at Danvers High School. This is a tragedy, he told a news conference. Chisholm was picked up by police while walking north along the highway in the early hours yesterday. The teen had not returned home after school on Tuesday and had been reported missing to police. Danvers is a small town about a half-hour's drive north of Boston. Public schools were closed there on Wednesday. Now, this is just 2 days after a 12-year-old boy fatally shot a math teacher and critically wounded 2 students at a school in the state of Nevada. Michael Lansbury, a 45-year-old former Marine in Afghanistan, was killed after confronting the shooter, allowing the other students to go free. The boy then took his own life by turning his 9mm semi-automatic handgun on himself at Sparks Middle School in Reno. So, tragic story there. And I know the case on Monday, in which the boy apparently took the gun from his parents' possession without their knowledge, and then took it to school. And now the parents are probably going to be held accountable, which I think they should be. I mean, you're responsible for that boy's conduct and behavior. That's not to excuse it by any means. So I think they should be held criminally responsible for it. And I'm not against people owning guns. But if you're going to own a gun, I want you to be held responsible for it being used properly. And if it's not used properly, I want you to be held even more accountable for it. Now, I want to know how this teacher up in out east was murdered. I don't know. I assume it was by a gun, but still. Why the growing violence in this country? Or are we just hearing more and more about it? Because I don't remember hearing very many teachers getting murdered when I was growing up. I bet there were a few teachers I didn't like, but I certainly would never resort to these means. But it is a different world now, at least in terms of attitude. One more thing I wanted to bring up, and then I'll get to what's trending today in just a moment. Well, this is a story I brought up yesterday. I'll start off with this because this is a very personal one. Well, the Food and Drug Administration is trying to solve a stubborn mystery surrounding the deaths of nearly 600 dogs that have eaten jerky treats, and officials are hoping to get owners and veterinarians to help them figure out what exactly may be causing these illnesses. The problem appears to be tied to dog pet treats made in China, the FDA said, though investigators haven't yet found a single certain cause. Well, the Food and Drug Administration says it received reports of illnesses in 3,600 dogs and in 10 cats in the United States since 2007, and 580 dogs have died. Well, the pet treats were sold under a wide variety of brand names. The complaints were sent in by pet owners, some of them unsure of the cause of their pets' illnesses. But many others were sent in by veterinarians who have seen repeated cases of kidney failure, gastrointestinal bleeding, which Gunther suffered from, and a rare kidney disorder. Now, FDA veterinarian Martine Hardogenis says the agency is now appealing to pet owners and veterinarians to send them more information on animals that have been sick after eating these treats. Pets can suffer from a decreased appetite, decreased activity, vomiting, and diarrhea, among other symptoms, within just hours of eating these treats, sold as jerky tenders or strips made of chicken, duck, sweet potatoes, or dried fruit. I know Gunther loved the bacon ones and the chicken ones the most. I don't think he ever had any of the others. And so I hope that we find the cause of this, and whoever is doing this, I want prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now, it's going to be pretty hard to prove that this is what killed Gunther because my mom had his remains cremated. It was just cheaper that way, and it was just simpler that way. But even so, if he were allowed to decompose naturally, it'd be kind of hard to prove now because it's been 3 months since he died. But I want to know, because I will not rest until I find the answer to this. Not just for me, but for other people who love their pets. Because pets are family. They aren't like family, they are family. And every dog that has been in my life, in this, in my house, or been in my life, has been family. And I named a podcasting network after Gunther because I want to preserve his memory. I don't know if I've told this on this program. Seems like I have. But when I first became news director at KRX Radio here 8 years ago, my mom said she had to stop listening to my newscast at home on her Bose radio because Gunther would run around the house trying to find me. Now, that's either an incredibly stupid dog or an incredibly loyal one. But I love the story so much, and so I want to preserve that memory. Because whenever I talked on the radio for those last few years, I imagined talking to Gunther, or that he could hear me. And as long as I kept talking,